Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar tonight. We are going to just take a minute while everyone logs on, and we will get started promptly at 7 o'clock, and we'll see you soon. Sorry, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. Old habits are hard to break there. Again, welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Sister Eilish McCullough, and I serve on the grassroots mobilization team at NEWORK. I am so excited to have you here with us tonight and to have you here with us because you are going to hear from some inspiring panelists who serve in cities across the country, from Seattle to Iowa to the border and to Washington, D.C. Now, as we begin tonight, um, we have an extremely packed agenda for you. You'll hear about a little bit about the inspiring work that our faith-filled advocates have been organizing and taking part in over the summer. Again, you'll hear from our panelists about their work in the field. You'll hear from two of our panelists about immigration policy and what is happening right now and what we're kind of looking at ahead. We'll share some calls to action with you, some resources that you can share with your family, your friends, your community members, your neighbors. And we'll take time for a short question and answer session before ending with a final panel where we'll bring our panelists back and let them offer a couple closing remarks. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and on Friday, you will receive an email with the recording of the webinar, with all of the materials that we talked about, and with a link to the slides, so you don't have to take copious notes tonight off the slides. And so, as we settle into this webinar tonight, we do so mindful that we are in the midst of the National Week of Migration here in the United States. And to open us up, we are going to share a prayer that is from the Jubilee for Migrants, which will take place in about 10 days. So as I begin, I invite you to take a moment to ground yourself in the presence of our God, to call to mind all those migrants, immigrants in our communities, those that we have accompanied, those we have journeyed with, those in our families and our friends. And we pray, good and gracious God, we thank you for the gift of families. We are grateful for all the joy and love they bring into our lives. And we ask that you provide special protection for all families, particularly those who face hardships as they move in search of a better life. Show mercy to those who travel in danger and lead them to a place of safety and peace. Comfort those who are alone and afraid because their families have been torn apart by violence and injustice. As we reflect upon the difficult journey that the Holy Family faced as refugees in Egypt, Help us to remember the suffering of all migrant families. Through the intercession of Mary, our mother, and Saint Joseph the Worker, we pray that all migrants may be reunited with their loved ones and find the meaningful work they seek. Open our hearts so that we may provide hospitality for all who come in search of refuge. Give us the courage to welcome every person as Christ in our midst. And together we say, Amen. And now I am excited to welcome to the webinar NEWORK's Executive Director, Lori Carafone, who will offer us a few words of welcome and grounding. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much, Sister Eilish, and welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for being here today. Before I begin my brief remarks, I want to acknowledge the tragic shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas this morning. Catholic sisters have long embraced nonviolence, and NEWORK decries all gun violence and condemns all acts of political violence. NEWORK Lobby for Catholic Social Justice continues to support common sense gun control in this country. Our prayers are with the families of the victims and all who experienced this horrendous act. I'd like to express my heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed panel of advocates joining us from Washington State, California, Texas, Iowa, and the District of Columbia, and for the incredible team at NEWORK for facilitating this event. Thank you to all of you also for being here and spending your time with us. As individuals and organizations committed to the common good, we are weaving a tapestry of solidarity and mutual support with and for one another. I have been serving as NEWORK's executive director for 2 months now. And in the words of a sign I saw at a recent vigil, so much to protest, so little cardboard. I am so proud that we at NEWORK have been unwavering in speaking truth to power, demanding that our country's laws and policies protect human dignity as a core gospel value. As one example of that, this summer, NEWORK led an advocacy against H.R. 1, President Trump's budget bill that takes away healthcare and food to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy and for mass deportations. With our incredible field and advocates teams, NEWORK has spread the word about how this bill will hurt all of us. And we are not done with our work. We are doubling down on our message that all of us deserve good health care, safe housing, clean air and water, and that families belong together. As the World Day of Migrants and Refugees draws near, we are devastated that our families are being torn apart and our communities are under siege, with masked agents in unmarked vehicles terrorizing our neighborhoods. NEWORK decries the government's unlawful, destructive, and cruel behavior. We demand compassion, due process, and respect for every person, no exceptions. Before I came to NEWORK, I spent over 13 years serving unaccompanied immigrant children, providing them with free legal representation and overseeing teams that provided these services to protect their rights as they sought asylum in the United States. Now, our government is putting children on planes in the middle of the night, trying to illegally deport them without due process under our laws. This is not the country that my own father, an immigrant at 9 years old, saw as a beacon of hope and welcome. We cannot give up now. Right now, we all need to bind together and also to open our hearts to welcome all people who want what we all want: to live in peace, to walk to school and church without fear, to feed our families. In the words of Pope Francis, we must include todos, todos, todos. Everyone, everyone, everyone. You are all here tonight because you have not lost sight of our shared humanity. As Pope Francis reminded us, every human being is precious. That sacredness demands a public reckoning with the truth and a commitment to protecting every member of our communities, no exceptions, so that all of us can thrive. And I'll turn it back to Sister Eilish.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for grounding us in our mission for tonight. As we reflect on Lori's words, I want to call us to hold in our minds and our hearts all those who have long been fighting for the rights of immigrants, who have been accompanying immigrants for decades, our own family members. And I especially want to highlight the amazing work that our field at NEWORK has done over the past couple of months. Our advocates have led vigils, rallies, prayer services in cities across the country. They have lined the streets proclaiming all are welcome, and they're calling us to remember that. In Cleveland, our advocates team coordinated a prayer vigil and walk for immigrants. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, and Youngstown, Ohio, advocates have held vigils in support of their immigrant siblings in their city centers, near detention centers, at ICE facilities. And in Orange, California, advocates lined the street calling for the support of their immigrant community. They have shared calls to action. They have supported one another. And I could go on and on about the amazing work that they have done and how they have filled me with hope. But what I want us all to remember is that we are in the midst of hard work, of work that we always say at NEWORK is long haul work. And that to do it, we must do the work together. We must be in community with one another. And now I would like to transition to our first panel of presenters, those who represent grassroots organizations. We will first hear from Alejandra Escobar, who is a community organizer with Escucha Mi Voz in the Archdiocese of Davenport, Iowa. And from Chris Kohler, who serves as the Director of Missions and Immigrant Affairs at the Immigrant and Refugee Ministry in the Archdiocese of Seattle. And finally, we'll hear from Jesus de la Torre, who is the Assistant Director for Global Migration at Hope Border Institute. Alejandra, Chris, and Jesus, thank you and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, sister. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alejandra Escobar, and I am the lead organizer at Escucha Mi Voz, Iowa, where we fight for social justice and immigration reform. So I'm going to give you a little update of what we are seeing in Iowa right now. So we're seeing people without criminal records getting detained and deported in less than a week. We're seeing workers who have been in this country for more than a decade getting detained at their annual ICE check-in. Domestic workers driving their cars on their way to work are getting stopped and detained. Construction workers are getting picked up and detained at Menard's parking lot. People who are getting detained are not showing up in any jail roster or ICE locator for several days or even weeks at a time. So it's like they basically disappear for weeks. We're also seeing ICE seeking bids to open a new processing center in Des Moines, Iowa, with up to 70 officers. And lastly, ICE and DHS have been trying to intimidate our Escucha Mi Voz members and our staff. So I'm going to expand a little bit on the last thing because it's really important. We at Escucha Mi Voz have been providing what we call protective accompaniment during ICE check-ins. These accompaniments have been crucial because it is a way for the entire community to witness what ICE does and hold them accountable. So in the past, we used to be able to have rallies on the public lawn in front of the ICE building in Cedar Rapids. Well, one of us, an interpreter, went inside with the individual who had check-in. But now that our accompaniments have gotten like way too big, we're talking about like 300 plus people, among them clergy, elected officials, community leaders, community organizers, and just regular people overall. ICE and the DHS blamed us, Escucha Mi Voz, for vandalizing their building. So, of course, when this came up, we took it seriously because that is not who we are. So, when we heard about it, we went and met with DHS and ICE to check like what our supposed vandalism looked like. And well, guess what? There was no such thing. They showed us two stickers on a dumpster that didn't even belong to the ICE building, but the building next door. So unfortunately, after these accusations, they have been bringing squad cars, taping the area around the ICE building with caution tape so they keep us away. They are having between 5 to 10 agents outside their building in full tactical gear, like guns, pepper sprays, vests, helmets, and masks that cover their entire face, with the sole purpose of trying to intimidate us. And I made emphasis on the public lawn because they're taping with caution tape the public lawn. So they keep us on the street, putting our lives at risk because of the street. So they also stopped allowing us, the interpreters, to go inside the building with the immigrant families who needed an interpreter. And that's like a really quick summary of what we have been seeing in Iowa. I would say that right now we have several pressing issues. However, in my opinion, the two more crucial are one, getting people to know their rights, and two is getting people to know that there is an organization that is providing protective accompaniment during their ICE check-ins. So protective accompaniments are the most powerful and meaningful opportunity we have to support and protect immigrant families. We have noticed that when we do these accompaniments, immigrant families feel connected, feel like they're not alone in this fight, have a sense of belonging, and they usually come back outside that office with a new appointment for next year. So yeah, our protective accompaniments are the way we're winning and bringing the entire community together. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, sister.
Thank you so much, Alejandra, for shedding light on what is going on in Iowa. And I will now welcome Chris to tell us about what's going on in Seattle.
Well, good afternoon and good evening to everyone. I wanted to start off by saying that, I've been working in immigration for over 30 years for the church, and most of that time was spent as the director of the immigrant ministry at St. James Cathedral. So a lot of my approach is really grounded in that work. So now I'm the director of missions and immigrant affairs for the Archdiocese of Seattle, and in that role, um, the way that we approach the work with the immigrant and refugee ministry is really to help parishes and individual Catholics to engage in immigration. In response to obviously what immigrants are being faced with, but most importantly in response to what they are asking for. So staying and having ways to really hear regularly from people is crucial. The reality in Seattle is much like the rest of the country. There is deep fear and trauma. Immigrants are afraid to go to church, to send their kids to school, even go shopping. Families, they need help connecting with family members who are being detained. Others really just need to know, and I get a lot of phone calls from people about the latest federal action and what it means for them and how it might affect them. We've seen workplace raids and increased ICE activity across the state, but not the type of large-scale actions like we've seen in Chicago and Florida and California and other places. At least not yet. One of the big issues that we're really trying to work on are the mental health issues for families, especially kids. And one really, I remember I just was talking to a teacher who was talking about how kids in her classroom have their phones out all the time because they're tracking their parents. You know, and, and there's just so much about that is wrong, and has affects people, affects kids and families so deeply. In response to all of this, now we worked with our local Catholic charities on Know Your Rights workshops, on family safety plan workshops, what to do if a parent gets deported and what's going to happen with the kids or the car or the finances of the house or anything else. Those people walk out of those workshops with, importantly, the documents that need to be notarized, completed and notarized. And also, we're just starting next week, legal clinic. And we've developed protocols and we've worked and trained pastors and parish staff, principals, and school staff on how to handle a visit from ICE. And we've done a lot of other work as well, and I'm not going to, go really list all of it, but we've also done things like we have an upcoming immigration summit, our 9th annual immigration summit here, and a pilgrimage to the detention center in a little over a week. But we've also, in addition to helping parishes and schools, we've really spent as much time helping individuals discern and get involved. And that includes what we call our Cabrini companions and Cabrini navigators. Those are people who help with things like navigating the school system or enrolling in healthcare or other things that that immigrants might need. We are helping parishes to form accompaniment teams for immigrants who have appointments or court hearings. During October, we will be praying remotely with praying the Rosary with immigrants in detention. So every Wednesday, while immigrants are praying the Rosary in detention, we'll be praying the Rosary as well at the same time, all across the Archdiocese. We also have our welcome circles, which are groups of anywhere from 5 to usually not more than about a dozen people who form around refugees and asylum seekers and really help them with everything they need, from housing to legal services to finding jobs to uh, connecting to their faith communities, or where to buy uh, culturally appropriate food. We've also recently recruited priests to just call immigrants who are wanting just to speak to a priest, just to have some time to talk and to pray. It's not in person. We would love to have that in person, but at least we have these phone calls available. And we are having our annual immigration summit on Saturday. We have right now 150 people registered for that and have had to close registration. So there's, I want to leave ample time for question and answer. So I'm just going to close by saying that there's a lot more that we're doing around advocacy and solidarity, including our upcoming pilgrimage and meeting with elected officials. But in the end, I think what I've shared kind of gives you a brief overview, but a good idea of the ways in which we here in the Archdiocese of Seattle are responding to the world we're currently living in. So with that, thank you, and I'll pass it on back to Sister.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's really interesting to hear about all of the work that you're doing in the Archdiocese and ways that we can apply some of what you're doing to our own locations. Now I'd like to welcome Jesus onto the screen to share about what is going on with Hope Border. If you just give me 1 second while I get your screen up.
Thank you, Sister. And I'll begin explaining who we are. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much to Network for the invitation to be here with you all today. And thank you to fellow panelists for their work and their inspiration. I'm Jesus de la Torre. I'm part of the Hope Border Institute. We are based in El Paso, Ciudad Juarez, at the border in Texas. And we are a faith strategy center for people pursuing justice at the US-Mexico border, rooted in Catholic social teaching. If we go to the next slide, I'll begin with the reality of the border and what we are experiencing, what my team is also experiencing there. Most likely you have heard about the numbers. We hear about numbers going down, less people crossing, and that's true. And that started last year. We saw that trend starting with the Biden administration, given hardening asylum restrictions. And we've seen that happening again this year after the end of asylum on our border and the end of CP1, the only way that people had to access asylum at the time. So as we are speaking, there is no way to access asylum at the border, and there are many people stranded in danger in Mexican cities. And the next one. If people try to seek asylum and they cross the border, they are going to face military zones. These are new areas that the government has created. And they said that if people cross them, they're committing another crime. They are not only trespassing the border, but they are also trespassing into a military area. And we have seen many people being charged with crimes for trespassing these areas. It's very hard to tell. There are only little signs, and no one can tell. Not even residents in the community can tell where the area begins or ends. And as we are speaking, particularly in Texas, in El Paso, 500 Texas National Guard agents are being deployed in El Paso to also patrol the border despite these lower encounters that we just discussed. In the next one, the reality is that the border has become increasingly militarized. We have troops deployed along the border wall. We have around 7,000 military troops in the border wall, just without counting with Border Patrol or with other entities. We have also military-style drones. We have also armored vehicles, all along the border wall to patrol, to militarize the communities. And in the same line, in the next one, just in El Paso, it opened what is said to become the biggest detention center in the country in Fort Bliss. 5,000 beds that they want to reach by the end of this year. at a military base that we know also had a controversial record, as it also served as a place where Japanese people were interned during Second World War, and people now are being held in this detention center in very poor conditions, without access to basic rights, without access to medical care in some cases, and without access to proper food, just to name a few. And as my colleagues were explaining before, in the next one, the border is also experiencing the same policies that are impacting the rest of the country. We are also seeing detentions in the courthouse. We are also seeing the separation of families and the deportation of people to countries they probably don't know, or countries they've never been at, or they were when they were children. However, we don't lose hope. We know that the welcoming identity of the border is going to prevail. We know that the border will continue to remain true to what it is, and all despite these policies. And we are fighting and working to remain true to that identity, to bring our community together, and to pursue hope rooted in action. So in the next one, the way we're standing in solidarity with our neighbors, the way we are working with our parishes, with our ministries, is in three different ways. We're trying to ensure that we are all prepared, that we all can be a voice with our migrant neighbors, and that we can be prophetic, we can bring some hope, and that hope is resulting in effective action. So in the next one, these are some of the things that we're doing and that most of you are doing as well. We are training people about their constitutional rights in parishes, in schools. We're working with many of these sensitive places where our kids, our elders are sick. They are going to seek care, so they are also safe and they know how to act when they encounter an immigration raid. In the next one, we are advocating with our faith leaders, with the bishop, with many other leaders in our community, to ensure that there is pastoral care for migrants in detention, that they can also seek God in these conditions while they are fighting for their release and their freedom. We're working to ensure that our local law enforcement agents can determine their priorities, and they are not forced to cooperate with other priorities they don't want to follow. And we got news and resolution to accurately count how many people are dying at our border, because unfortunately, that continues to be the reality, and to end border deaths. In the next one. And we are coming together. We are rallying the community. We are standing united, and we are trying to tell our immigrant neighbors that they are not alone. They are not alone in this moment, that we stand with them, and that our gospel, our values, our God, they all call us to stand in solidarity and to stand for joint liberation. We did a march with Bishop Mark Sides and other fellow border bishops and bishops from across the country and faith leaders from across the country and the border, to stand in solidarity in March. And I'll talk more about that later. We are doing a series of prayers. Tomorrow we have the next one. So if you're in the area, come join us at 6 p.m. St. Patrick's Cathedral in El Paso. And we are also promoting how others can do the same. And in the next one. And for those who are stranded in danger, we are accompanying them. We are finding them. We are delivering humanitarian aid with our neighbors in Ciudad Juarez. And we're also rallying medical volunteers for those people who are afraid and they cannot go out, so they can also access some healthcare. All these abuses are documented. And we brought these voices to international organizations and to our government. And in the next one. And if you may, we may have a weekly appointment. We can send you all this news, all these actions via your email. So you can go to our website that you will get on the follow-up email, subscribe to our Frontera Dispatch, and we will send you weekly updates about what's happening, what we're doing, and how you can join us. So thank you very much for this time, and we look forward to hearing your questions after. And back to Sister Ellis.
Thank you so much, Jesus, for sharing with us the reality of the border and for giving us hope by talking about what we can do together, how we can show up and be present and in solidarity with one another. Also, a huge thank you to Alejandra and to Chris for sharing with us today. I saw so many questions coming into the Q&A as they were talking. And as a reminder, please put any of your questions in the question and answer box that's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do your best to answer them either live during the webinar or we'll send a follow-up email for you. And up next, we are going to transition to our immigration policy presentations. Joining us this evening or this afternoon is Ashley Feasley, who is the legal expert in residence at the Immigration Law and Policy Initiative at the Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law and Hyphen Partnerships Immigration Policy Fellow. And you will also hear from NEWORK's own Senior Government Relations Advocate for Immigration, Giovanna Oaxaca. And I will turn it over to you first, Ashley.
Hi, thank you so much for having me to talk about a couple kind of policy things that are going on that are of particular concern, and also highlighting what can be done. So we just heard, I think, some wonderful kind of firsthand testimony about the border, and kind of some of the efforts there. But I'm going to focus on the interior, and some of the impacts that we're seeing on the vulnerable. If you could go to the first slide. So I want to just talk a little bit about the sensitive locations or protected areas policy that was ended recently and what we can do about it. Just a brief history. In 2011, this was a new policy. ICE issued it, and it just applied to ICE, so the interior of the US, and it was specifically about preventing enforcement in houses of worship, schools, hospitals. That could only happen in exigent circumstances. In 2014, CBP issues a similar policy for the 100-mile border zone, very much mirroring the language. So fast forward, we go through the entire end of the Obama administration and the Trump administration, and we have these two policies on record. And to the most part, I think, we saw some degree of enforcement. In 2021, the Biden administration issues a DHS-wide policy impacting all parts of the Department of Homeland Security and broadens the locations, really after taking extensive feedback from the community about certain things. It's renamed protected areas. And an example of this would be the school bus stops. There were a number of enforcement actions that occurred under the Obama administration at school bus stops. That was now included in the new policy. The first days of the Trump administration, the policy was rescinded, and a general kind of vague guideline was given that does not have any real specifics on conduct for enforcement in terms of bright line rules. So that is where we are now, up to speed. We do not have a specific policy document that prohibits actions at certain places. And communities of faith, understandably, are very impacted. So I want to go to the next slide. So, one of the things that I think is really important, can we go to the next slide? Is talking about safe space policy. One of the things that's emerging is maybe say, we don't have the protected guidance, but there are things that can be done in terms of trying to facilitate safe spaces or expectations of safety in certain spaces that were part of the protected areas policy before. And some of these are just kind of practical common sense things, like thinking about which staff members are authorized to speak to law enforcement agents if they were to come to a parish rectory, or if they were to come to a preschool. All of the information about individuals who attend these and participate in these community areas, sharing that information among the staff and making sure that there's real protections of that data information, making sure that there is communication, text chains, and other things to communicate with parents and staff if an incident does occur. giving authorized kind of ways to access these types of facilities, and then creating a visitor code of conduct. These are all things that can be done in the face of losing this policy that can create a little bit more of a safe space in terms of engaging. I want to flag for everybody, there's a really great resource from CLASP about safe spaces, and I urge you to look at it and just see a little bit about what can be done. Some of them are just some common sense things that will help, I think, improve in this climate of enforcement. I'm going to go to the next slide. Just to wrap up a little bit about the sensitive locations, as I mentioned, going through safe spaces policy, consider drafting one. If you have some, things that you are thinking about there, look at that guide. Speak to the diocesan leadership about this. They certainly should be helpful in decision making and discussing this. Obviously, accompaniment and documenting incidents where you find either state or federal law enforcement officers coming on to spaces that were before considered protected areas is certainly important. I suggest you join, there's a large working group, the Protected Areas Working Group, and a number of groups across the country are working on many elements of this. It's helpful to have people that you work with. And then I have two pieces of advocacy at the national and the state level. The national level, there is a piece of legislation. It's called the Protecting Sensitive Locations Act. In the Senate, it's S455. The House, it's HR 1061. Now, at the time, right now, these are not bipartisan bills. They're just Democratic bills. I think even more of a reason to bring this up to your lawmaker if you have a lawmaker who's not on the bill, who's a Democrat, or a Republican who's yet to sign on, talking about how important this is, really, I think is helpful. The last piece on this is to advocate at the state level. It's really important that we think about encouraging state legislatures to create what policies they can that are not in contravention of federal government, rights to do this. And two examples are Maryland and Colorado, who this year did ratify such policies. I'm happy to answer more questions about that in the question and answer, but there is a lot of work to be done at the state and local. I'm going to cover one more thing and kind of move forward to set the stage for Giovanna. And this is kind of talking a little bit about HR1. If you could go to my last one of two slides. I want to just be very clear that the reconciliation bill had many provisions, but we would be remiss in not highlighting the amount of funding, the unprecedented amount of funding that went to the Department of Homeland Security expressly for immigration enforcement. $170.7 billion went for immigration enforcement. 75 billion went to ICE over 4 years. And then there are express hiring goals, including 10,000 ICE officers as a hiring goal. Just to understand, CBO has mentioned that this will result as an estimate in the removal and voluntary outmigration of more than 300,000 immigrants in the next 4 to 5 years. And so, if you go to the last slide here very quickly, what does it mean? I think we are going to see and are going to see more family impacts as we see families who are impacted by these enforcement actions, particularly thinking about U.S. citizen children who have undocumented family members who could get impacted by this. The level of enforcement is really unprecedented. We have never had this level of particularly immigration detention, and then the cost to the U.S. taxpayer. And so I leave on this note of, we're going to talk probably at some question and answer, but really the time now is to move forward with demanding oversight from Congress on how this money is spent and what it looks like. I'm very appreciative for the chance to talk with you quickly about a number of these things and look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, well, hi everyone. I'll just pick it up right here from where Ashley left off, just to highlight that HR 1 is what we've been calling a generational threat to families. Ashley mentioned some of the long-term impacts. There are several impacts of the bill that are immediate. And so I just want to refresh three really important things to keep in mind and remember about HR 1, which some people call the Big Bad Bill, some people call by its name, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. One, it expands the federal government's detention and mass deportation apparatus. Two, it raises the cost of maintaining lawful status for certain types of immigrants and humanitarian status, asylum, etc. Three, it also eliminates access to vital social services for various certain types of immigrants, including refugees, asylum seekers, and others who have lawful status. So just on top of some of the things that Ashley mentioned, there are other adverse impacts on immigrant families and refugee families. But even with passage of this bill, the president cannot claim a very clear mandate. And why is that? Because you've already seen across the nation public opposition that is mounting, particularly in regards to family separation, the detention of long-term residents, including nearly 20 DACA recipients who are supposed to have protection from deportation and removal. We've also seen actions against students' free speech rights, as well as other advocates, the removal of Indigenous unaccompanied children, as highlighted by our executive director earlier this call, and costly deportations to third countries like El Salvador's CICOT. And I just want to spend a minute just honoring some of the people that have been affected by these policies, including Ayman, Xochitl, Jimena, Marcelo, Narciso, Yonsu. These represent some of the individuals who have been taken away from their communities. And as their families, their loved ones, and their friends have rallied behind them, I want to note, their identity, their dignity, and their resiliency continues to shine through. And this is inspiring me, and I think should inspire all of us who are working together for solutions to keep up a steady pressure, to continue to work on our part at a national level to work with lawmakers to turn this visible outcry into policy change. Next slide, please. I know this is kind of policy wonky, but one of those opportunities is the annual funding cycle. Every year, lawmakers must pass all 12 of what are called appropriations bills by a certain deadline to avoid the government shutting down. And this looming deadline is on September 30th. Unfortunately, this year, because of stiff partisan gridlock, in part fueled by Republicans' refusals to lower healthcare costs for working families, we may see either a shutdown or a stopgap funding bill. But turning to the larger picture, this appropriations process usually results in an omnibus package, a combination of multiple bills. And what it does is it ends up reflecting our nation's values. So it's a prime opportunity to advocate. On immigration, the accounts that you need to keep in mind are Homeland Security, Labor, Health, and Human Services, Commerce, Justice, and Science, or CJS, and State and Foreign Operations, or SFOPs. In our upcoming action alert, we're actually going to have an opportunity for you to send an email to your representatives because there's still opportunity to make these bills stronger, as while the House has passed their Homeland, Labor, Health, and Human Services, CJS, and SFOPs bill, the Senate has not yet advanced their Homeland Security and SFOPs bills. And there are also really key differences between what the House has put out and what the Senate has put out. So there's a chance for you to be instrumental in making sure that Congress, one, reduces ICE's already bloated budget, because they are proposing to raise it even more than what HR 1 would, to make sure that some of the worst provisions of the House proposals do not come to pass, and that bipartisan funding is secured for immigrant legal access and for refugee resettlement and integration. So take a look on that action alert when that comes out, probably tomorrow or Friday. Next slide. Pivoting to an even larger picture, I want to talk about the legislative landscape, because in the midst of the challenges that we've heard today, we must not lose sight of the urgent need for immigration reform. For decades, Americans have supported a pathway to legal status for undocumented immigrants who've lived here for years, have raised families, and are contributing to their communities. And Gallup actually reports that that number went from 70 to 78% of Americans now saying they support a pathway to citizenship, with the largest gains actually being in Republican support from 46% to 59%. While obviously there is strong backing for enforcing our immigration laws, Americans also clearly want a more balanced approach, and one that the current president's policy just fails to deliver. So in response to that, there have been a number of legislative proposals, which I'll talk about very briefly, but I want you to consider a few statistics. One, there are thousands of children and spouses of US citizens, and the fact that our families are increasingly mixed of different statuses, and that we have unmet agricultural workforce needs and other workforce needs. In fact, the US agricultural workforce declined by 7% between March and July. Next slide, please. I'm going to start by saying, we're not endorsing all of these pieces of legislation or proposals that you'll hear about today. I just want to make it clear that there are proposals out there and that there is work happening, because what we need is a political will to transform some of these ideas into policy change. Momentum has been building around several different proposals that I would say are focused around 4 key themes. One, a pathway to long-term status, though not all of them have a pathway to citizenship. The second theme is asylum reform. The third theme is immigration enforcement and border security. And the fourth theme is workforce-related immigration solutions. And as you can see, these are some of the pieces of legislation, and you can take a picture or we can send out the slides afterwards. Next slide. But if you go deeper, it explains a little bit about each one of these bills. We're talking about the Dignity Act, the American Families United Act, Farm Workforce Modernization Act, American Dream and Promise Act, the so-called Registry Act, and the newly reintroduced Essential Workers for Economic Advancements Act. You don't need to squint to look at all the details. We'll be sending these out later. Next slide. Those are just some of the proposals that have been introduced. So they've gone through the hurdles of getting sponsors, and they've crafted something that they've put on paper and submitted to Congress as a bill. But there are also other proposals that are just frameworks. And so I want to talk about them very briefly. There's a proposal called the Path Forward to Secure Our Borders and Reform Our Immigration System. There is another led by Congressman Swozy and Congressman Luttrell called the Bipartisan Effort to Address Border Security and Immigration. There is an initiative led by Senator Gallego from Arizona called the Securing the Border and Fueling Economic Prosperity Initiative. The Center for American Progress put out a new American system to safeguard America's security, expand economic growth, and make us stronger. And for comparison, I put the Border Act of 2024, which was a bill more or less supported by President Biden when he was in office. Next slide. Again, you don't need to squint to see all of the details here, but this is a quick analysis of where these bills lie along different themes that I mentioned earlier. It's important just to note that there is bipartisan work happening on the Hill that, as much as, we write off sometimes these efforts, I think it's really important to engage. So despite strong headwinds in Congress, we at NEWORK remain committed to advocating for solutions, and we'll continue to evaluate these and other proposals, amplify public support, and push for that political will that we need to make reform a priority. Finally, I just want to, say, don't underestimate your power. Don't underestimate the power of incremental change, whether this is making small decimal budget allocations in the appropriations process or mailing your member of Congress to tell them you support an immigration reform. Any progress, even progress on the margins, moves us forward. And second, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle need to hear from you. And we really need is a groundswell of support. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to Sister Eilish.
Thank you so much, Giovanna and Ashley, for sharing with us what is going on at the legislative level and with policy. I know you provided so much information, and as a reminder, everyone will be receiving these slides so you can look at this more closely. Real quick, Giovanna mentioned that we have a call to action coming out from NEWORK that we will be sharing soon, and you will receive that in your email by the end of the week. And it is asking you to contact your member of Congress. We encourage you to email that representative and then to share that action alert with your friends and family. Also, share the Justice for Immigrants Vigil Toolkit or Clinic's Rapid Response Toolkit. They are both excellent resources of information. Next, we are encouraging everyone to join the One Church, One Family Catholic Public Witness for Immigrants that is taking place across the country on October 22nd and November 13th. We will be sharing more information, including the website, about how you can get involved. And finally, with our call to action, we invite you to bring others along with you. Out of all of you that registered for the webinar tonight, you represent 45 states plus the District of Columbia. That is amazing. Just think about the power and the reach that we all have when we come together. And now I am going to invite all of the panelists back on the screen for a very brief question and answer session. Okay, we have seen a lot of questions flying in the chat, but I'm going to really start with one question that really encompasses both the grassroots and the policy side. So one of the things we hear a lot, we saw in the chat, is what more can people do? How can people get involved both in their local communities and at the policy level? So I'll turn it over first for a quick response to Alejandra, Chris, or Jesus about how people can get involved in their local communities. I know you all touched on this a little bit, but maybe where they might turn to look for partners on the ground or things they might be able to do. And any one of you can answer.
I would say reach out to your local organization and ask if they need volunteers for like services like rights, protective accompaniment, charity. You know, all those people who have been detained are the main providers. So moms are being left behind with the kids trying to find a job. So they're in need of formula, diapers, food, and all of that can help a lot.
Thank you so much, Alejandra.
And can I just follow up on that? So that's exactly right. You know, what Alejandra is saying. And you know, I would just add, in addition, I tell people that really that what we need for people to do is to open their mouths, open their hearts and hands, and open their wallets. So it's great people think about like getting involved and volunteering, but we need people to provide the resources that we have as individuals in order to make a difference. So I really encourage people to find the local agencies or organizations and groups and to support them with more than time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris.
And quickly, I'll say, yes, absolutely yes to all of that. And I'm sure like many of you are going to your parishes, and probably in your parishes, there are people who are going through very difficult times. Just look at them, talk to them, and I'm sure you're going to discover a bunch of things that you can do, from accompanying them to the check-ins if they have check-ins with ICE, from accompanying them if they have been separated from their relatives, including from their parents, or simply advocating with them. Sometimes the policy changes, they don't have to be in Washington, D.C., they can be in your community, they can be in your city council, they can be in your county office, and you can talk to your representatives at those levels as well. And you can find support there, and you can find change over there. And of course, connect to your diocese in case you have any questions, or with your local Catholic charities or your local organizations. And all of us will be more than happy to support, because we are eager to work with each one of you, and we are excited to have you on board.
Thank you. And Giovanna or Ashley, anything to add to that question from the legislative side?
You want to go first?
Sure. There are lots of organizations and coalitions that would love to have your support, whether that's, signing a letter, a petition, picking up the phone and making that call to your member of Congress. There are also often events at night, vigils that you can attend. Make it work in your schedule, but I think everyone can take a little action here and there that makes sense with their schedule, with their lives, and help us make that progress happen.
And just to follow up on that, you may live in a blue district and your lawmaker may be fabulous. You may live in a red district and it may feel like, well, why do I do this? We are in an era of stats. They have to record if you call as a constituent to bring up an issue. They have to be pleasant to you because you are their elected, they are your elected official. And so it may seem, obviously all the things that Giovanna has mentioned about joining in the power of coalition and activity, but really, we forget they are our elected representatives and senators. And I think an expectation of, kind of calling them to I like this, I don't like this. Organizations like NEWORK and others can help you make this not onerous. I would say there's amazing action alerts, but I would also say literally calling or emailing is so important, regardless of where you're living and who your lawmaker is.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley. And I think that is an excellent note to end on with the Q&A. And we will do follow-up for all the other amazing questions that we've received. And we'll make sure you get those answers in any follow-up emails. They're recorded through Zoom. And I want to turn real quick as we wrap up and give each of the panelists about 60 seconds for any closing remarks or comments on what you heard from other panelists, from other presenters, or anything you'd want to pick up. And we'll just go in the same order of the presentation. So we'll start with you, Alejandra.
Mine is really short. Let's just all get inspired by what happened in Broadview, Illinois, outside the Rice Center. And let's try to make that happen 1,000,000 times all over the country so we can resist and win.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, really, I just want to say ditto, but I'll add that, we always get these questions, what's the most important thing, or what should we do first, or whatever. And the thing is that there's so much that needs to be done. People should just start wherever, because we don't need everybody to do everything all the time. So find your place, find the thing that, really encourage people to find the thing that they really feel called to do, and to stick with that. And that'll lead to other things as well.
Amen. Jesus.
And also very briefly, we don't need to do big things. Sometimes we come together to do massive things across the country, but we come to realize that the small gestures, the small accompaniment, those things that seem insignificant, they're also the most important. Take on those, get out there, do them, and then of course, join us and let's work together for the big things. And as Gio said, is long due that we deserve immigration reform, and we are pushing for that, and we're going to be working for justice now and every day. But keep doing those small things, and we'll keep working on the big ones. But don't lose hope. Once we lose hope, we've lost everything.
Thank you. Ashley.
So I think part of the battle is caring, and you're here, you're on this webinar, and I think it's so crucial to continue on. You know, all of the panelists have offered really important things, community level, small, big, but one of the things that I think is just vital is to spread the word. There's so much going on the day to day, and the fact that you took time out of your day to be here, talk to your neighbor about this, talk to somebody else in your church, and continue to promote how important this is and what a crucial moment it is to do something, to use the words of Chris, to do something here. And that is a start that we have to continue to do in this era of many things coming at us.
And wrap us up, Giovanna.
I have a post-it note saved somewhere that says something like, if I cannot do great big things, I will do great small things, one piece at a time. And that's the message for today, folks. We have a lot of power ourselves and a lot of heart, and I think we can apply that to any measure of caring that you can muster for others, whether that's directly accompanying, spiritually supporting, just reaching out with a call to somebody that you know and love, or taking that next step to do advocacy. So thanks for being here and caring.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as each one of the panelists talked about, we are doing this work together. We are taking those first steps together in advocacy and in hope. And at Network, we know that we cannot do this work without all of you. Not only is your presence on webinars what gives us hope and the energy and the motivation to keep going day after day, your support is also critical. You know, the work that you heard about tonight, the work that we're doing on the Hill, the work that you're doing in your communities as part of advocate teams, as part of our entire network of supporters, is only possible because of you. I encourage you, as you are able, to join us in advancing justice and allowing all of us to thrive by making a donation today to Network. When you donate, you join more than 5,600 members who are powering our mission. Grants of $50 or more give you an annual membership where you will receive Connection, which is our award-winning quarterly magazine. You can use this special link that's on your screen, and that will be in your email on Friday to make a donation if you so feel called. That link is www.networklobby.org/justice seekers. And again, on behalf of Network, I want to extend my deep gratitude to our amazing panelists tonight, and especially to Giovanna, whose work in immigration advocacy is what carries all of us forward, and who was able to assemble these panelists and this webinar tonight. Make sure you check your email for our the recording on Friday, the action alerts, and all of the wonderful resources that everyone talked about tonight. Again, a huge thank you to everyone. And we look forward to being with you in this fight for immigration rights together soon. Remember, when we do this together, all of us can thrive. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.